Alright, hello and welcome everybody, it's Kicker of Elves here with a single focus on the mind. Our zombie season is almost over, and after the recent OTA we saw some nerfs to Mercury, among other many tech cards following the trend. The popular opinion now, and even a few weeks before the OTA, was that Move, these 12 cards over here, is the best deck in the game. Now, typically, Move is seen as a very hard to play deck, and yes, it is very different from your traditional sort of mid-range piles or even just standard combo decks you might be used to playing. So going into the next season, you might be hearing, oh great, Move's the best deck, but I don't want to deal with playing it. So here I'm going to give you an in-depth guide on how you can master this deck. Yes, it is difficult, but with a little bit of practice and proving grounds, you can use this deck to absolutely crush the ranked ladder. The amount of unpredictability and the amount of choice and control that you have without really being a control deck is very incredible. So without further ado, I just want to speak to this entire deck and what it can do for you. As a whole, just holistically, what this deck is trying to do is either overwhelm your opponent with points in 2 lanes or get a massive Human Torch, Dagger, and a couple other bodies in 1 lane, then win the other lane with the Juggernaut. The amount of control and point output you can do on this is sometimes similar to negative. Human Torch is often discussed as one of the best cards, if not the very best card in the entire game, and it can really just be a lot of fun. Yes, there's going to be situations where you don't draw your scalers or you're just getting sort of clunky beginning draws. That's the same with every deck. For those, I'm going to show you how to kind of tell when you have a bad hand and just retreat, dip out of there for 1 cube, get into the next game, and just continue absolutely dominating the ladder. So with that, I think the best way to talk about this deck is to go into a card by card breakdown. So let's start with Arana. Arana, another card that has been nerfed several times. This is the only card you want to be playing out on the first turn. She is sort of a force multiplier, especially for Human Torch. You're kind of ideal god first 3 turns in the match, assuming your locations are good, would be getting Arana down on 1, playing Madam Web to the right of her, and then on turn 3, using Arana's activate effect to, after you play your next card, give it +1 power and move it to the right, on Human Torch to move that Human Torch into the Madam Web location. Those 3 turns already, and then being able to move Torch out of Madam Web the next turn, that's already a 16 power play, just going into the beginning of turn 4 before factoring any other cards. That's incredible output. But Arana isn't just about, that's ideal. You want to put Arana's buff onto Human Torch, that is your first priority. But again, not every match you're going to be drawing Human Torch. This card isn't just uselessly sitting on the board. You can get creative. If there's a Sanctum Sanctorum and you just want to throw another card in there to guarantee that win, you can tell your opponent's playing like just whatever deck doesn't have the ability to get in there. I was thinking like Destroy or Discard, when both those decks have ways to get in there. But just getting into out of reach locations, very helpful with that. You can just sort of toss your Cloak in there. You can toss a card that's just like, all right, this body is going to be enough for me to win this location. Even doing some kind of tricky stuff that we could talk about more later. Hellion, great card. Maybe you want to, if you haven't gotten the draws or you're trying to be a little tricky, you throw your Hellion over to the location after it uses on reveal. Arana is really, really nice from a control perspective and a fantastic force multiplier for what you're trying to do in this deck. Next card is Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider is awesome. Next season we are getting a skill card called Web Sling that is 1 cost with the basic text that says next turn move one of your cards here away. I honestly think that might have the potential to replace Ghost Spider. We'll have to see, but she is incredible. This is, on reveal, the last card you played moves here. You want to be playing this ideally after moving or after playing a Human Torch or a Dagger. In the best case scenario, you have your Madam Web down in the beginning of the turn. You are either your last card you played or the first card you're playing this turn is being moved into the Madam Web location, or if you're starting with Madam Web, let's say you've got Madam Web and you've got a Dagger in that location. That was the last card you played. What you want to do is move that dagger to a location where there's a lot of other cards so you can get all the big buffs, and then play Ghost Spider to bring that card back into Madam Web's location. So next turn, you can either move that move scaler again, or get tricky and move your Ghost Spider doing something like that, another card that's in there. Basically, wherever unless things are, you're just snowballing and your torch is 64 power and it doesn't really matter, you're just like, oh, I've got this. You want to use that Ghost Spider not just to trigger the move card again, but to move it to a ideal location for you so you can continue to get move triggers, or if it's towards the end of the match and you're just like, oh, my torch is huge, this is going to win me this one lane, you really just want this card because you don't have a lot of single move pulls to do that. And also, the last card you played moves here, that played text is important. So it's not about the card that's you most recently moved. There's another card that does that. It's the last card you played. So just make sure to check your ordering with this deck. Again, I strongly recommend you take this into Proving Grounds or Conquest to mess around with this before you start trying to push it on Ladder. This isn't something where you need to be like a trained martial artist. Yes, I'm only playing move for the next 16 weeks and I will end the season at rank 30 because that's no. A little bit of practice and you're going to get this deck down. Trust me, you're a good player. So that's Ghost Spider. Let's talk Madam Web. Madam Web, just a fantastic card. This really changed Move forever when this came out in September of 2024. Now here we are, beginning of November, and this is just a fantastic card. This is your absolute top priority card to get down on turn 2. I will say, try not to, everything depends on your locations and stuff like that. Try to get her in the middle location. I find that to be a very good advantageous spot. Because of Heimdall as an option to move all your cards to the left at the end, don't find that I want her in the left lane very often. But like I said earlier with Arana, such a powerful 1, 2, 3 punch is Arana on 1, Madam Web on 2, activate Arana on Human Torch on turn 3 to move him into the Madam Web lane. Next turn you move that torch, you've got 16 power. And you can Ghost Spider him back or do everything there, you are scaling off the chain. But Madam Web, getting this on 2 is almost a snap condition if you have Human Torch, Dagger, Juggernaut, Heimdall, any 2 of those cards in your hand. Ideally a Human Torch and a Heimdall or Juggernaut going off. She just opens up so many different lines, draws so much attention from your opponent. They have to respect every kind of movement. And it's not just, obviously, increasing the power of your move scalers. You got some decent bodies in this deck in cards like Cloak and even Ghost Spider. They're nicely statted for their cost. Being able to move those cards around, if you're saying, okay, listen, my Human Torch is 30 power, my Dagger is 18 power, I want to win this Madam Web location, you can stop moving them out of there and just move your other bodies to help solidify other locations. If your opponent's playing really hard at 2 locations, move your Cloak into a 3rd location. They now have to contest that, and they can't just throw a random Ant-Man or just some low-cost thing. 4 power is enough. They have to do something to contest with that. So Madam Web really exists to, first and foremost, completely boost up the power of your Human Torch and your Dagger, your scaling cards there. And secondly, it can just be great for mind games. I'm moving other cards. I'm getting cards that aren't scalers out into other locations. You're going to have to deal with that, or I'm going to win by a small number of points thanks to Madam Web. So I love this card. Part of me still wishes I could make her work with Professor X. I'm always trying to find ways to make Professor X work, but even this move-dominated meta, probably not his time. Anyway, I digress with that. Madam Web, phenomenal card. If you're getting her down on turn 2, you're in a very strong spot. Sparky. This is a crazy card. This is perhaps your biggest force multiplier in the deck. Sparky says activate. Give your card that last moved plus 3 power and move it back to its previous location. So this is not like Ghost Spider. This is not applying its effect to the last card you played. you need to have a card that has moved, and it's the last card that's moved. So you can save this until the very end of the game if you need to, if you're playing Heimdall and you want to be really cheeky and you've sequenced your cards in such a way that you know, okay, hey, the last Heimdall is going to move all my cards, and the very last card that's going to move, which for reference is going to be, in that case, the card in the lowest position on the right. So if you've got full lanes, it's the bottom right card and whatever the rightmost lane is, not including Heimdall. You're like, okay, let's just say that's Human Torch. You got a Human Torch in one location, you got a Dagger in another location, moving them all there. Wait for Sparky, boom, move that last card back. It's Human Torch. You put +3 power on him, and then he doubles. You've scored that lane. Sparky works phenomenally with Human Torch and Dagger, and it's really important to just do that timing. I was talking earlier about how good an Arana into Madam Web into Human Torch playline is. Same can be said for Sparky. If you're playing Arana turn 1, Sparky turn 2, and then you activate both of them on Torch for when you play him turn 3, that's 22 power right away. That is more than any of your opponents can realistically be outputting, barring some very weird location, influencing their hand or Sakar just on a normal game of Marble Snap. That's an incredibly strong output. Similar to Arana, and similar to every other deck in the game, being honest here, you're not going to get your nut draw every single time. You're not going to have exactly the cards you want at the exact right time every single game. So don't be afraid if you can tell that your opponent's not, if you're playing Destroy and they're not making a giant Deadpool, and you're like, all right, well, it's turn 4 and I haven't drawn my Torch. I had to play Craven and Cloak. I'm in this weird spot. Don't be afraid to, if you've moved a card, use Sparky. +3 power is huge. Most things in the game that give you +3 power, whether it was old Surfer, old Dagger, anything putting +3 power onto something, that's typically the point where second dinner is like, all right, gotta nerf this. We still got +3 power on here. In certain games, moving your cloak and turning it into a 2/7, that can be a strong location contester. Now let's talk Dagger, the first of our 2 major move scalers. Dagger is really, really strong, and she also serves as not a counter, but a natural predator of this deck is a deck that wants to play a lot of cards. In an ideal world, to oversimplify our game plan with this deck, we want to be winning one lane with a giant Human Torch, and then with some of our other cards, stealing the game with a Juggernaut. This absolutely crushes destroy decks, Storm War Machine Legion, stuff like that. Anything that's playing, for Galactus first out, anything that's playing some relatively fair, high stat cards in small numbers, that game plan just destroys it. But Dagger, and she is, let's be clear, the lesser of our 2 move scalers. If you're playing a deck, or even if you can just sort of time it out depending on priority, that wants to play and have a decent amount of cards on the board, this card goes absolutely crazy. One move from playing this into a Madam Web location into another full location is putting this up to a 2/10. That is nothing to scoff at. Dagger is absolutely incredible. She works wonderfully with your Arana, your Sparky, your Ghost Spider, anything that's trying to move or enable this. Dagger's fantastic. She's one of the best possible cards you can play on turn 2. And again, even in these situations where you're not getting all of your cards perfectly, if you're playing this out on turn 2, that's going to pressure your opponent to play in certain locations. If he wants to start building up that Zombie Scarlet Witch lane, and you've played this in a location where is different from the one he's playing Zombie Scarlet Witch, that's putting some pressure on him. Just throwing a Dagger onto the board, again, be mindful of what's in your hand. You don't want to just throw this out there willy-nilly. You want to be like, okay, I have a Ghost Spider, I've got some other move enabler, like Cloak, like Ghost Spider, like Hellion. If you're looking at in your hand and your only move enabler is Heimdall, maybe start considering that retreat. But Dagger's a really wonderful card. She's not as strong as Human Torch, but she can really be excellent. And depending on the kinds of decks you're playing, or just what other move enablers you have in your deck, you can really pop off with her, and she can honestly be a big part in that condition of winning one lane with points, stealing the other lane with Juggernaut. Dagger is a really fantastic card. Don't sleep on her. Craven. Craven is a card that I think I am less hot on than I should be. I think people seem to really like Craven. I do not love this card in this deck. He is, another move payoff. He's not one of your enablers, but, you're moving a lot of cards, so okay. If you're moving cards around the board a lot, him getting +2s, him doing that can be good. And it is. If you have Craven down in a good location when you're doing a Heimdall game plan, this guy can go up to 210 easily. But I just do not love him. I will say that outright, but objectively speaking, he is a good card. He's fine in this, but he just doesn't feel like when I'm playing the game and if I don't have Torch or Dagger, but I have Craven, I'm not like, all right, Craven's gonna win this out for me. I'm like, okay, this does not feel great. I'd rather see almost any other 2 or 3 cost in my hand than Craven. But that all being said, Craven's role is a smaller scaler. He can pair very well with Cloak, where you're giving your opponent the ability to move cards as well. He can definitely be there to deter, like, all right, I'm playing Craven here. I've got Craven on the board. Turn 3, I'm playing a Cloak. Just throwing it out there. You typically don't want to do that, but you want to play to your outs, play the cards that you have. You having that Craven is going to make your opponent think about, okay, am I really going to benefit from moving these cards? Because if Craven goes there before, Craven goes there first, or if Craven is even in that Cloak lane, they're like, all right, am I about to give this card +6 power? Does it really matter if I move? He can be very good in that regard. And again, for a Heimdall game plan, Heimdall can be a very skill-intensive card. If you've got him in a spot where he's going to be the first to move to a location and you have 2 or 3 other cards moving there, that can be a lot of sudden power that your opponent can't account for. So Craven, good card. I'm not thrilled about him, candidly, going into next season. This is probably the card I am going to look at cutting for Spider-Punk, which is the new season pass card in the November season. Spider-Punk being a 3/3 that can move once on its own and has the text of when it moves, it steals 2 power from a location. So I'm probably cutting Craven for Spider-Punk, but we'll have to see. Lower series card, can be a phenomenal payoff. Don't sleep on Craven, even though I'm negative on it. Give it a try. Cloak, great body, first and foremost, 2/4, but that ability on reveal, next turn both players can move cards to his location. Cloak is frankly a worse version of Hellion, where Hellion just gives you, the player playing the card, the ability to move cards to the location. Cloak typically wants to be played on turn 5 alongside a Cosmo or another card, and you're setting yourself up for, okay, I'm either going to win the Cloak location with one of my scalers if I'm moving a 16 power Human Torch or an 8 power Human Torch or some other cards into the Cloak location, then I'm going to try to steal the lane with Juggernaut, or you're using Cloak to reposition your other cards, setting up for a Heimdall play. Like, one of the big heuristics of this deck that sounds obvious, but when you're playing, this can end up getting awkward, is let's say you have Dagger and Human Torch out on the board. You never want those to be in the same location at the end of the game. Those are your 2, if you're trying to win on points, if you don't draw a Juggernaut, but you have a good amount of your move enablers and your scalers out there, you always want to have Cloak, and I was going to say Cloak and Dagger. Cloak and Dagger very well may be in the same location. Cloak, Dagger, oh my god, Dagger and Human Torch need to be in 2 locations to increase your chances of winning the game on points. If they're both in the same location, you're not playing like a Nexus match or something, not going to pay off. So he can be a really great way to set that up or just recorrect. It's like, all right, I've got Human Torch over in the middle lane at 32 power. They're not contesting that. I've got Cosmo in there, whatever. Torch lane is fine. Let me reposition Dagger out of there so I can contest this other location. Really phenomenal, and like I just said with Craven, if you're able to play him on the Craven location, you're going to boost him up as well, while also threatening your opponent with, yeah, sure, you can move cards to this spot too, but my Craven's going to get bigger. Cloak I like a lot, but he's also just worse Hellion in a lot of regards. Where I do love Cloak is on turn 6, if you're going with a Juggernaut game plan, being able to play Cloak after Juggernaut. Just, you want to use your full 6 energy. If you need to help close the gap on a location, it's like, all right, the only way Juggernaut's going to win me this location is if after I move cards, I have more points there. Okay, if I play 5, which is Juggernaut's power, I'm not going to contest it. Cloak brings that up to a 9 power play, which can be huge. So Cloak often stays in my hand till turn 6 if I've got other movers like Hellion, like my Madam Web, but he can really help you steal a location with Juggernaut. No complaints about Cloak. Cosmo. This deck gets to play Cosmo, and it is phenomenal. I am not the biggest fan of tech cards. I love what's happened to Shang-Chi. Obviously, I love the Mercury nerf as someone who plans on playing a lot of Move next season. I love the Enchantress nerfs. I love that. There was if you've been playing this game for a long time, there was just way too long where Sarah tech decks, tech suit, blah, blah, blah. I've heard, to do a quick tangent, when Loki came out and Glenn Jones went on KM Best's podcast, Snapshot with Brendan Patrick. I missed that podcast. I want to get that back, but probably never happening. They were talking about how playing Loki has made Shang-Chi go away, and Glenn did a little fist bump. I love the direction of making the game so it's not about being policed by tech cards, especially reactive tech cards. That feels just horrible. Losing 8 cubes to Shang-Chi felt horrible. With all that being said, I absolutely love Cosmo in this deck. Am I being a bit hypocritical? Maybe, but Cosmo he's definitely harder to pull off than Shang-Chi in the old days, but especially in this deck, can be a really great way to check decks that want to try to similarly go over the top like you do. A couple of examples. And this is another reason why I strongly recommend taking this into Proving Grounds or into Silver or whatever Conquest before taking it on the rank ladder if you've never played Move before, because you can practice things like this and start getting reads on this. If you're playing a Destroy deck and you have priority, you see them okay, they're trying to be greedy here. They've got Deadpool, X-23, and Headpool in a location. I've got priority. If you've got Cosmo and going into turn 3, let's say, if you've got Cosmo and Human Torch and you're going into priority, I'd honestly say throw that Cosmo down that location and try to lock them out. If they're trying to play Carnage there, they've filled up that location. They have to play Killmonger somewhere else to get that started. Doing things like that is a really great way to out-tempo your opponents. You're a combo deck as a move ultimately, but making plays like that can be a really, really great way to mess with your opponents and just get ahead, not just on points, but by setting them back on their game plan. Because then you can always, if you have Human Torch and a Madam Web, or even a Human Torch and a few move enablers, you can start massively scaling it pretty quickly, almost out of nowhere. And if you're able to Cosmo and shut down one of their key plays, it can feel phenomenal. I recently won an Infinity Conquest with this deck, and on the game in Game 5, the deciding factor was that I was playing a Mr. Negative deck, and I was able to call, and I had priority going into turn 3, where they had played a Psylocke. I was able to know, okay, they are definitely, I wasn't able to know, but I made the call, this is where they're going to play negative. If I can Cosmo them there, that's going to shut down their game plan. I did the read correct, played Cosmo, negative flips, does nothing. Stuff like that feels phenomenal, and playing Cosmo in this deck is less about your ability to be a good move player, and a lot of it is just how long you've played the game. Oh, I'm going up against a Destroy deck, they're probably going to be playing here. I'm going up against a negative deck, and based on the locations, they're probably going to play negative here. I'm going up against a discard deck, and based on the location, they're probably going to play MODOK here. The more you know the matchups and the more you know what you're playing against in Marvel Snap, the more you can use Cosmo proactively. Now, as a reactive defensive card, Cosmo is phenomenal too. In a best case scenario, wherever you have your big green power point scaler, your Human Torch, your Dagger, Craven if he's over there or whatever. I don't love Craven. I really don't love Craven, even though he's quite good. Just feels weird to play. If you can get your 32 power Human Torch and a Cosmo in the same location, there is no interaction with that. Human Torch is a 3 cost now. Killmonger is not doing anything. You get Cosmo set up there, you are completely safe. No Shadow King, no Shang. I've honestly been seeing a lot more Shadow King since the nerf, and I've been playing a lot of move and zombies decks, so Shadow King really ruins my day. Cosmo says, look, and this is a great Ryan Gonzalez variant. The good boy here says, nope, you're not ruining nothing. We're staying strong. Now, perhaps the best thing about running Cosmo specifically in a move deck, in this move deck, is being able to play Cosmo into Madam Web. Now, having Cosmo and Madam Web originally immediately creates some mind games. Opponent has to worry about, okay, are they going to move this to another location? Is it going to keep it here? Where am I going to be able to play my on reveals? And what's fantastic about Cosmo into Madam Web is that when you move him, priority doesn't matter. A lot of times, especially if you're not popping off with this deck, like if you've played an Arana, a Sparky, a Madam Web, and you're like playing Cosmo on turn 4 or whatever, you're not going to have priority. But when you move Cosmo to a different location, that happens before cards reveal, that happens before priority. That's the first thing that goes on. So you can not have priority and still move Cosmo into a key location where they're trying to do a destroy with Venom, play Mr. Negative, all those sorts of things. So Cosmo really is phenomenal in this deck. It is a skill testing card, not specifically for playing move, but for just your knowledge of the matchups in Marvel Snap. Can't recommend this card enough. Really phenomenal that this combo deck gets to afford playing tech like Cosmo. Love them. Okay, Human Torch. This is the card that makes everything really work in this deck. If you watch Snap Judgments, which is, if you don't, I have no idea how you got here, strongly recommend you watch them. They did a Glazer, Butt, and Cougar did a top 10 cards in Marvel Snap, and Human Torch was ranked number 1. Now, I might have a number 1. I think there's another card in this very same list that I might put at number 1 personally, but Human Torch is incredible. Just absolutely awesome. And the reason for that is the word double right here. Having access to multiplicative scaling is huge in this game. The zombie archetype, which came out over this October 2025 season, is wonderful, but unless you're doing crazy stuff with Absorbing Man, Zola Grandmaster, you're really doing additive scaling. You're playing all these, your Wiccan Galactus First Steps decks. You are playing a fair, honest game of Marvel Snap, where you are putting more power onto the board. Human Torch multiplies. Human Torch says, after 4 moves, I am so big that there's realistically no way you're contesting this location with just me in it. He is your favorite card to get on turn 3 or to have in your opening hand with another move enabler every single time. He is crucial to enabling your game plan of, I'm going to win one lane with my giant Human Torch and then steal another lane using Juggernaut. Just phenomenal. Having the iconic Arana into Madam Web, into using Arana to throw Human Torch into Madam Web on turn 3 location just puts you at such a strong advantage. Using Arana, Sparky Human Torch to just have that 22 power on turn 3 really sets the tempo for the rest of the game. Your opponent doesn't know if you have other movers. What's going to happen? You just put so much pressure and so much power. And I feel like when they made this change, because let's just say you're watching this and you've just started playing, for a very long time, Human Torch was a 1-2 with the same text. And the existence of cards like primarily Killmonger really threatened move stability. So they moved him to a 3 cost and they moved Vulture down to a 1 cost. Vulture used to be a 3 cost. And I feel like at first people thought, this is a move. This change to the deck is a nerf, or there was some uncertainty. But I think having him at a 3 cost is phenomenal. If it's perfectly into your curve, you don't have to do all this weird techie stuff with, okay, I'm gonna play Iron Fist, then Human Torch, Ghost Spider, move this, grab that. You're not messing around with that stuff anymore. If you get Human Torch behind a Cosmo, you are completely safe. Barring you're playing some weird Negasonic thing or playing against whatever that. It feels phenomenal. Human Torch, the games where you don't have him on curve, you will feel the difference. Having him early, having him on curve with a with a Arana or a Madam Web or a Sparky, or you have a Ghost Spy, or you have other enablers, is practically a snap condition. Again, while you're practicing, maybe go a little bit easier on that. You don't want to snap, or especially if you don't listen to the advice and you just take the straight onto ladder, which I would not recommend. Practice in Proving Grounds, practice in Conquest, get a good feel for it. Human Torch makes those games feel phenomenal. So, Juggernaut. This is probably my pick for best card in the game. They've nerfed him. He's a 4/5, used to be a 3/3. The ability in this deck to get a card like Human Torch, Dagger, or even just other well-statted cards to a position where they're winning a location and then throwing down a Juggernaut, especially if you can keep priority on turn 6 to steal the game, is just wonderful. This card absolutely crushes at every single possible outcome. You build your power up, you throw him down. He's a 4/5. Like, I really recommend saving this card until turn 6. Things would have to be going very strange if I'm trying to win this Asgard location. I've done that before. It really doesn't feel great. Typically by turn 4, you should know how you're going to do for the rest of the game. By turn 4, if you don't have Dagger or Human Torch, you don't have good cards on the board, you're probably retreating and then going into turn 5 with 2 additional cards is not going to win it for you. This is a turn 6 play unless the game situation is hyper specific, but you are using this and then positioning it into a lane where maybe you're using Madam Web to, instead of move one of your huge cards, you're like, okay, Torch is in the right location with Cosmo. That lane is absolutely one. Let me move. I'm going to sacrifice this Madam Web location. Let me throw Ghost Spider or the Cloak I have in my Madam Web location over to a location where I can win with Juggernaut. Making sure to time that out and just doing a little bit of math. Like, okay, if I put 5 additional power in here, do I win the location? That's the formula you're trying to do. You need to be confident in that like Juggernaut's not going to auto win you locations. If there's no space to move cards, it's not doing anything. But if you're playing a deck like Destroy, a negative that hasn't drawn Jane Fauster, some discard decks, if Galactus First Steps, Wiccan stuff, Storm War Machine Legion, any deck where you can tell this guy wants to play high statted cards in low numbers to beat me, Juggernaut's going to steal the game for you. He is probably, in my opinion, the best card in the game. An extremely powerful tech card. Certainly not fun to get Juggernaut played against you, but the plan A of this deck is win one location with one of your move scalers, Human Torch or Dagger, steal the other lane with Juggernaut, and it can feel fantastic when you pull that off. Hellion. When Hellion came out around the same time as Mercury. I feel like initially people were a little bit mid on him. Hellion feels phenomenal. This is, bar none, your ideal turn 5 play. He's just better Cloak in a lot of regards. Well, better Cloak is harsh. Depending on the state of the game, a turn 5 Cloak plus Cosmo can be just about as great as a turn 5 Hellion, but I love the asymmetrical nature of Hellion. On reveal next turn, you can move cards to this location. Cloak gives that option to your opponent as well, and that can really mess up if you're trying to go for a win one location with points, win another location with Juggernaut game plan. Hellion, especially in an ideal situation, throughout the game, you're playing your cards in the left and the center, you play Hellion on the right, and then you pick which cards you want to move over there to win that location, and then close things off with the Juggernaut on the other location. Now, I've talked a lot about Juggernaut because I just love that card. I love that game plan. That feels like a very classic sort of control deck. I was a big fan of the Scams Thanos decks back in the day. Wrote an article for Marvel Snap Zone about that back in 2023. Loved the feeling of, I've got this location won, how do I steal this other location with a Valkyrie, with another card? This replicates that feel of, alright, Hellion's 8 power on his own, that's a good body. You throw him down, you move a Torch over, I've got that location, let me mess around with Juggernaut on the other. But Hellion's also really crucial to setting up your Heimdall play. If you're saying, okay, I'm playing Heimdall to win this next move, use Hellion to reposition. Make sure your torch is in a separate lane from your dagger and your Craven. Make sure that you are using the board space to reposition so that when you move with Heimdall, Craven is going to be the first or second card to move into a lane so that other cards move in after him and he gets the bonus, stuff like that. Hellion gives you the ability to correct and change your positioning and execute on your end game while also putting a lot of stress on your opponent. If you're playing Hellion in one location and you've got Madam Web in another, or if you're using Hellion to pull cards back into a Madam Web location for, if you got an extra energy, you're playing them on 4 or something crazy like that. Typically, you don't want to be doing that, but your opponent just has to say, oh my god, they have no idea what they're going into, what they're looking at on turn 6. And if you're going to just move the entire board with Heimdall, or if you're going to create a 64 power Human Torch, and you have to be very confident with this deck to do this, you don't move anything, and you just sort of have them freak out, assuming, okay, they're going to move Torch over here to the Hellion location, so I'm going to early play Shadow King to snipe it, and you just don't do that. It feels phenomenal. Last but certainly not least is Heimdall. For a long time, there was a classic and still very funny meme about how the traditional line was Heimdall into lose, and this deck has come a long way since that. You don't have to play Heimdall on turn 6, but a 6/10 that just moves everything else, procs up pretty much all of your other cards that matter to win, can be excellent. It can really shift things up to where if your opponent thinks an investment in one location is enough, and you just go ahead and completely change the board state with Heimdall. This can be really great for dealing with tech cards. If they think that your Human Torch is going to be in the middle location and you've got priority and they're ready to snipe that, and you Heimdall to move them over to the left location, and that Shadow King was just sitting there, a sad 3/4 using half their turn's energy, that feels pretty good. Heimdall, honestly, more than any other card in this game, really in this deck at least, requires your attention to detail on positioning, knowing which card is going to move last, and tracking, okay, it moves from left to right, so in the order that you play cards into a location, the first card is in the top left, and if you fill a location, the last card is in the bottom right. That's the order in which they move. So if you've used a Hellion to reposition things, and you're going to play Heimdall, and okay, Hellion is the first card in my right location, let me make sure I move Craven over there next, because when I Heimdall, all the cards behind him that are going to move with him will boost his points that way. You have to do a lot of mental math, and then sometimes you also have to remember where you're playing Heimdall. He is not moving. You have to account, where do I need this 10 power? Am I using this card to just throw the game? Because a lot of times it's going to be better just to play a Juggernaut, or if you've been popping off throughout the match and you already have tons of points on your Torch and your Dagger, you might not even want to waste the time throwing Heimdall and messing things around. But he can really change things up. It feels phenomenal when you pull that off, or use Heimdall to move a card into a location you can't get into, or just trivialize their point investment by turning a 32 power Torch into a 64 power one, getting 8 more points onto a Dagger, and then having your decently sized 10 body elsewhere. Just make sure going into that final turn, you're tracking when you're moving something, where it's coming from, whether it's coming from Madam Web, whether it's coming from Hellion, and Heimdall can work wonders for you. And with that, that's the story of the move deck right now. I strongly encourage everybody who wants to have a lot of fun and climb well next season to give this a spin. At the time of this video coming out, we've still got 2 days to practice before the ranks reset, so if you're on Infinite and you don't really care about your ranking right now, or you're not trying to grind for top 100 or whatever it is, I'd say spend this time doing that. I'm sitting at around rank 1500 this season, having a really great time. I've won Infinity Conquest with this. Take it for a spin, practice. You will not regret using the move deck. It'll be a lot of fun. And thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one. Bye.